Have you seen the price of canvases lately? It's like they're woven out of golden silk. You buy two, and suddenly you're choosing between painting and groceries. So, today I'm going to show how you stretch your own canvas, because it turns out you can make them way cheaper and you don't even need a trust fund to paint on something bigger than a postage stamp. Step 1, we're going on an adventure, and by adventure I mean hitting every thrift store in a 20-mile radius like a bargain hunting raccoon. You're not looking for good art, in fact, the worse it looks, the better. What you want are those glorious wooden stretcher bars that are currently trapped under some of the ugliest art humanity has ever produced. I'm talking about galloping horse paintings, or worse, those massive canvas prints with one single word written in curly script like live, laugh, love, or family, or eating zone. You know the kind, haunting the walls of every modern farmhouse kitchen across America. It's like a cult, but with burlap throw pillows. But here's the thing, you gotta be kinda careful. Not every thrift store canvas is a winner. Sometimes you flip one over all excited, and instead of a nice wooden stretcher bar, you find particle board, basically glorified sawdust glued together, heavy as a brick and about as useful. You can't restretch on it, you can't fix it, and if you try, it's just gonna crumble like a Nature Valley granola bar. Moral of the story, if it's not wood, you don't want it. Simple as that. Step 2, time to actually get to work. This is both the fun part and also the really annoying part. You finally get to cut all that thrift store tragedy off the frame. It's kind of cathartic, like biting your toenails, except a lot less shame. Now, technically, you could gesso over the old canvas if you want to pinch every penny, but if you're willing to spend a little, I recommend grabbing some fresh canvas or linen from the art store. Your future self will thank you, and so will whoever buys your paintings. Now for the annoying part, staples. So many staples. Every cheap painting is basically held together with half the world's supply of staples. You can technically leave them in, and I'll admit I do sometimes when they're being especially stubborn, but here's the problem. When you start to go stretch a new canvas over them, your fresh staple will smack right into an old one and refuse to seat properly. Nothing kills your momentum faster than fighting invisible metal ghosts in the wood. So as tedious as it is, getting those staples out is well worth it, and it will save you more time in the long run. Step 2.5, recycling your own art. Not every painting you make needs to stay stretched forever. Maybe you don't love it, maybe you need the frame, or maybe you just don't want to stare at it anymore. Whatever the reason, you can always pull it off and reuse the stretcher. Lay the painting face down on a clean surface, or let's be real, a surface already covered in staple shrapnel from step 2. Gently work the canvas off the back of the cradle, and boom, you've got a free frame again. The painting itself can be rolled up for storage, or if you still kind of like it, pin it to the wall. Call it a tapestry. I don't really care. Instant studio decor. Little side note on that, make sure to roll the canvas so the painting is facing down, or I guess facing outward of the roll, otherwise you will compress the oil paint and it is more likely to crack. In my case, I'm going to stick it in the corner of all of my other paintings that are hanging out in my studio. Step 3, selecting your fabric. This is where you get to make some choices. And I know choices are hard, I don't know what you want to eat either. But here's some tips. If you're on a really tight budget and you're just trying to stretch as many canvases as possible, cotton canvas is your friend. It's cheap, it gets the job done, and as long as you don't grab that flimsy see-through stuff, it holds up just as well as linen. Now, if you want to be a little bit fancier, linen is the way to go. Yes, it will cost you more, like a fuckload more, but it gives you a smoother, slightly tougher surface to work on. Plus, it's really pretty, it feels nice, and honestly, who doesn't want their painting to start off feeling luxurious? Of course, if you're like me and you've been buying and stretching canvases for years, you eventually end up with a chaotic pile of random fabric scraps. I keep them all. Why? Because when I do my monthly canvas stretching session, I can always dig through the sack and find enough to cover whatever thrift store frame I pick up that week. The trick is to lay your fabric out flat, fold all of the sides, and make sure you've got 2 to 3 inches left to wrap around the back. That extra fabric gives you room to pull everything nice and tight without running out of material mid-stretch. Step 4, the actual stretching. This is the part where the magic happens, or the part where you discover how strong your hands aren't. The goal here is to get even tension all the way around, so you don't end up with a saggy canvas in the middle. And the trick is starting by putting one staple dead center on each side, pulling the fabric tight as you go, Then rotate the frame like you're moving around the face of a clock, and keep adding one staple per side. Pull, staple, rotate, pull, staple, rotate, and just keep going until you get towards the edges. This is where people tend to kind of overdo it. You don't actually need as many staples as most people think. Space them out about 2 to 3 inches apart. That's plenty to hold the tension while you work your way around. Don't feel like you have to staple every half inch like you're upholstering a chair. This is a canvas, not a sofa. And by working in a circle, you're keeping the staples evenly spaced. You'll end up with a really nice, even tension without wasting half a box of staples. Now, if you notice when I flip the canvas over, it's not perfectly tight. There are a couple wrinkles, and you can still see those fold lines from where the linen was stored. That's totally fine. Don't panic and start yanking it like you're trying to tune a drum. This step is all about getting it mostly tight, like 90%. The last little bit of tension happens later when you apply the sizing layer. That's when the fabric really tightens up and those wrinkles disappear, so don't stress about perfection right now. As long as it looks smooth overall, you're in the clear. Step 5, corners. Welcome to the part of canvas stretching that starts fights on the internet. Everyone swears their fold is the only right way, and if you do it differently, you're basically insulting their ancestors. I don't really know how to describe exactly what I'm doing, but it's more of a visual thing. Just watch and try it yourself. It's pretty easy. You can also just not do any of this and crease the corner, fold it over, and staple that down, which I also do on some of these canvases when I'm trying to save time. But that right there is how you do the cleanest fold. Just make sure you're still adding a decent amount of tension at the corner, because I feel like the corners tend to loosen up, and then I will show that again from a different angle. You're basically doing 2 separate folds away from each of the corners of the canvas, and then folding the bottom one over the top so you get a clean edge. It's also really not that deep. You can just fold it over the side and do none of that folding if you can't figure it out, like I have shown here. I do that for a lot of canvases also. Step 6, do it over and over and over again. Stretching canvas isn't a one and done deal. If you paint a lot, this becomes part of the routine. Cutting fabric, pulling it tight, stapling, folding the corners, just keep repeating over and over and over again. And here's the thing, every single time I show how to do this, it brings out the Instagram and YouTube art critics. You know the ones, people who don't paint but somehow have a PhD in telling you you're wrong. But that's just the nature of the internet. Doesn't matter what you're doing, cooking, fixing your car, or in this case, stretching a canvas. Someone out there has decided that their way is the way, and you're a complete fool for doing anything differently. So let me be clear, this is just my way of stretching canvas. It works, it holds up, and it keeps me painting instead of wasting money on overpriced pre-mades. If you've got a different method that works for you, awesome, go do that. But if you're about to scroll down to the comments to lecture me about how I should be using tacks instead of staples because you watched a 3.5-hour art restoration documentary, do us both a favor. Delete the comment, grab a snack, maybe stretch your own canvas, and kindly fuck off. Because honestly, at the end of the day, the point isn't to win the How to Stretch Your Canvas Olympics. The point is to get a good surface to paint on without spending a fortune, so you can actually get back to doing what you really like, which is painting. And everything else is just noise. Step 7, rabbit skin glue. What actually is rabbit skin glue? Well, it's kind of in the name. It's a traditional artist medium made by boiling down rabbit hides in order to extract collagen. When it's dried and ground, you rehydrate it with water, and boom, you've got glue. Artists have been using it for centuries as a size, which is a preparatory layer brushed onto raw canvas or linen before priming. Its main job is to seal the fabric, stiffen it up, and protect it from the oils in paint that would otherwise eat through your canvas over time. So why do I still use rabbit skin glue when there's more modern alternatives? Which is pretty simple. It has this really nice property where as it dries, it shrinks and the canvas will tighten up like a drum. It's kind of like buying a t-shirt that fits perfectly in the store, tossing it in the wash, and you pull it out 2 sizes smaller, except in this case, that shrinkage is exactly what you want. Now, the main reason for a size in the first place is to protect the canvas from oil. That step becomes completely irrelevant if you're using acrylic paint or acrylic gesso, since both of these seal the fabric on their own. I only use oil paint, so I primarily go with an oil ground. That's the white stuff you spread all over your canvas after sizing. The glue does the tightening and creates the sealing protective layer, while the oil ground makes the surface non-absorbent and really smooth, and together they give you a really solid surface that is built to last. Once you're ready to actually make the rabbit skin glue, here's how I do it. I use a ratio of 1 part glue to 10 parts water, and that's a good starting point. You can adjust the ratio thinner or thicker depending on your preference, but it gets you in the right ballpark. I like to pre-mix the glue granules with water and let it sit overnight, and by the next day the glue has softened up and melts down much more smoothly. When it's time to heat it up, you'll want to set up a double boiler system, basically a pot of simmering water with a heat-safe container inside holding your glue mixture, and then keep stirring it continuously. Most importantly, make sure the glue doesn't get hotter than 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius. Any hotter and you'll start ruining the glue and breaking down the proteins, which makes the glue lose pretty much all of its glue properties. You'll want to start adding the glue onto the canvases as soon as you take it off the double boiler. As the glue starts to cool down, it starts to turn back into like a jelly consistency, and then it won't absorb into the canvas. I like to use a wide soft brush and evenly coat the surface, starting from one edge and working your way across, making sure every bit of fabric is covered. As it dries, you'll notice the canvas pulling taut, almost like it's being ironed from the inside, and that's exactly what you want. It's a sign the glue is starting to do its job and shrink the fibers of the canvas. I like to let it fully dry, which takes about a day, and then add a second layer of rabbit skin glue. I don't show that here, but make sure you have 2 coats. Also, make sure to add glue to all of the sides of the canvas. And just like that, you should have a bunch of canvases that sound like a drum. Step 8. Applying the oil ground. Once your glue layer is dry, it's time to move on to the oil ground. The first thing you'll notice is that straight out of the jar, oil ground is thick. If you try to spread it as is, it can be extremely stubborn and quite difficult to get it to go across the canvas evenly. To make it more manageable, I dilute it with about 10% Gamsol or another odorless mineral spirit. This thins it just enough to glide smoothly over the canvas without losing the integrity of the paint surface. Pour your diluted mixture into a palette or container, then grab a 3-inch paint roller and start applying. Use even, long strokes, making sure every corner and edge is fully covered. A little goes a long way with oil ground. You actually need a lot less than you think. The trick is to put some elbow grease into it and really roll it out evenly. The thinner this layer is, the faster it will dry. Oil ground can take about a week to fully cure, so spreading it thin ensures smooth and even surface that's ready for painting sooner rather than later. Alright, let's talk surfaces. Oil ground is the classic choice, and for good reason. The pros are that it's non-absorbent, so oil paint stays right on top of the surface, and doesn't leave dead spots by sucking up oil from the top layers of paint. Since it's smooth and non-absorbent, paint tends to glide across it a bit more easily, so you end up using less paint in the long run. The biggest downside is that it takes about a week to fully dry, so you do need to plan ahead if you are going to use an oil ground. Acrylic gesso, on the other hand, is fast drying and very forgiving, and it's easy to build up layers quickly. But it's really absorbent, which means oil paint can get pulled into the ground layer, leaving dry, chalky looking spots on your painting. The most important thing to remember is that you can paint oil over acrylic gesso, but you can't paint acrylic over oil ground. Seriously, don't try it, your paint will flake off. So here's the deal, if you're sticking with oils, oil ground is kinda where it's at. If you want speed or plan to use acrylics, acrylic gesso is your friend. Either way, your oils will happily go on both, but acrylic will only play nice with acrylic. Okay, before I get to pricing, I do want to say one last thing. Please don't go out to the thrift store and find a stretcher and destroy somebody's art, even if you don't like it. Make sure that whatever you're taking the stretcher from is kind of just like a mass printed piece of art. I wouldn't want to encourage everyone to go to the thrift store and ruin stuff if they accidentally ruin some priceless piece of art they found at the thrift store. Just double check that it's actually a trash piece of painting before you rip it apart with a pair of scissors. Alright, after applying a second coat of oil ground the next day, the question becomes, is this really worth it? Starting with time spent, not including drying times, it took me about 4 hours total to get all of these stretched and ready for paint, which leaves the question, How much did each of these cost, and is it really that much cheaper than just going out and buying pre-prepared canvases? Starting with finding out how much I would have spent if I had just ordered them. Going over to Blick, I ended up making 3 linen canvases and 2 cotton canvases. The total cost, if I had ordered these, is just under $600. Now the tricky part, how much did each of these cost by themselves doing it myself? Starting with the stretcher bars from the thrift store, I spent about $15 on all 5. As for fabric, I technically didn't buy any of these. I have a collection of fabric just lying around, but to find out the prices, I'll figure it out. Linen costs about 3 cents per square inch, and cotton costs about 1 cent per square inch. The oil ground I use costs about 0.0008 cents per square inch. Rabbit skin glue costs about 0.46 cents or 0.046 cents per gram, and I used about 100 grams, so I'll round that up to about $5 to make it easier. And given I didn't mess any of that math up, I spent a total of about $106.92, saving me a grand total of $484.13. And if I divide that by how many hours I actually spent doing this, I pretty much paid myself $121 an hour. So I'd say that's well worth it.